was a hectic, probably frightening day yesterday. Tell us about yours.
Yeah, so I can't say it was frightening. It was more angering in my mind. I mean, it was an assault upon our democracy. If you're a constitutional conservative and you see somebody breaking into a nation's capital, disrupting a constitutionally ordered process, think of all those men and women at Barksdale and those who have served in our armed forces in Northwest Louisiana. Everything that they have fought to protect, and in some cases have relatives who died to protect, was under assault yesterday. Our Constitution, and so I rarely agree with Chuck Schumer, but when he said that it's a day that will live in infamy, on that I do agree.
Senator Cassidy, I kind of put this out earlier today. If there's 10 buckets on the table, there's some folks in this far right bucket, and there's some folks in this far left bucket. But the vast majority of us are in those middle buckets. And the people in the far right bucket and the far left bucket don't want to listen to anybody else. And that folks in the far right bucket, they're cursing you. They're screaming at you. They don't like Senator Cassidy anymore. They want you gone. How do we reach those people that are at the extreme, or do we even need to?
Of course, we're fellow Americans. And the way I look at it, Aaron, this should be about truth. Now, it may seem naive, but if we are going to move forward as a country, what, to the best of our understanding, is true. Now, if you just decided you believe something and you don't care, you're an ideologue. I can't help that. I'm sorry. I hope I can reach you in some other way. But you're an ideologue. You don't care about anything but your own ideas, and it doesn't matter what the facts are. But if you're someone who cares about our country, who actually cares about fellow Americans, who, whatever your race, religious background, gender, you name it, you want to see good things for our country and continue to enjoy the freedoms that we have, well, then let's talk. If I make mistakes, let me know about them. If there's something being said which is not true out there, and I think it's not true, and I tell you that, well, you give me a fair hearing. If we do that, we can move together as a country. If we don't do that, we end up with more episodes like yesterday.
Got a question for you on our message board this morning. They knew there was a protest planned, and all you had on guard were Capitol Police with pistols and a guy with a baton. Who dropped the ball in terms of security, if anyone did?
Believe me, that's going to be looked at. You know, I was here when they were having all the Black Lives Matters protests, and there was 3 different lines of Capitol Police officers. 3 different lines. Last night there wasn't a single line, meaning that there was just kind of the normal force that you would expect on a day such as this. So clearly somebody dropped the ball. Believe me, that's going to be looked at.
Dr. Bill, you had made a statement, I guess it was earlier this week, maybe last week, that you would not object to the certification of the Electoral College votes in any of the, I'll call them, questionable states. Is it your sense? Are you sleeping okay at night that that the presidential election and even the Senate runoffs in Georgia were all honest, all above board, and everything was legit?
Absolutely. If you look at the court cases, now I say court cases because you can lie on social media or on a television show and no consequences. In fact, your ratings may go up because people like to listen to you. Itchy ears, if you will. I think the Bible describes it. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, if you go to court and you present a lie, you go to jail. And so the only way you can make things different is if you go to court and you win your case. There is dozens and dozens of court cases presented, and not a single one of them found fraud. 90 different judges ruled, many of them appointed by President Trump. And not only were the court cases rejected, they were described as without merit, built upon conjecture, totally false, absurd. Those are the kind of things that were being used to describe these court cases. Now, if we're a country that believes in the rule of law, I'm a conservative. I believe in the Constitution, which is why yesterday was a tragedy. And I also believe that if in law and order, And I believe that judges, ultimately, we listen to what they say. With that, and by the way, I also believe in states' rights. I also believe that some small elite in Washington, D.C. should not attempt to overturn an election just because they don't like it. It's up to states to decide that. And by the way, those states are run by Republican governors, or they have Republican legislators, or they have Republican county officials. All these Republicans were supposedly in on a fraud. So you pick the reason, but all those reasons put together build a pretty strong case that I sleep very well at night, that the American system worked and that our Constitution worked, and that, unfortunately, however disappointed I am, because I voted for President Trump, supported President Trump, contributed to President Trump, but whatever happened, the election is what it is.
Does President Trump deserve any of the blame for this chaos that is happening now? And how much? How much?
Pastor Barry Black, the degree that anybody, whatever their role in life, who was in a position to know better but chose to ignore, contributed to the idea that on the Electoral College count, we could overturn the election. That was wrong. That misled Americans and probably contributed to yesterday. People thought that they were going to, I gather, actually overturn an election based upon the Electoral College count.
Dr. Bill,
Vice President Mike Pence made it clear that could not happen. So anyone that contributed to that bears some responsibility.
Senator, are they coming for my guns now? Are they going to go after my 401k? How much doom and gloom should I be worried about with a Democratic president and Democratic Congress?
Well, I losing Georgia obviously gave Democrats everything. The best we can say that it's very narrowly divided. So if they go too far to the left, I think they actually lose some people in their party and they lose their working majority. That's the best we can say. By the way, that's also a consequence of all this. Our poll numbers in Georgia were doing well until Josh Hawley, I'm told, began to speak about all the conspiracies. And then Republican voters decided to stay home. And that's when our poll numbers begin to worsen.
Excuse me, Dr. Bill, when you talk about Georgia not going too far left or the possibility of going too far left, you can't get too much further left than Raphael Warnock, right?
Believe me. Oh, my gosh. There's consequences to all these actions. And unfortunately, it hurt our conservative cause in that way, too. I mentioned the other ways earlier, but that way, too. So as a conservative, I find all this very regrettable.
Okay, one more, and I don't want to do this, but I'm going to do it.
About 90 seconds, we know you got a deadline.
You're being called a rhino today. You're hearing it. How do you answer that?
Wait, I'm being called a rhino because I object to people breaking into taxpayer-owned property to try and subvert our Constitution, to try and overturn a lawful election. I'm being called names because I object to people who want to replace the American flag with a different flag, to people who caused something which caused someone to be shot, who wanted to overturn state rights, who wanted to overturn rule of law. I think anybody that objects to those positions needs to look in the mirror very seriously.